This is Talk 650.
This is Talk 650.
Powered by CBS Radio.
Well, in studio with us at this hour to help us break it down is constitutional scholar Dr. Ronald Trowbridge, who's a senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation's Center for Education Policy. Ronald, welcome back into the show.
Oh, I'm delighted, and I'm so delighted to see the Dow is up because I can stay retired.
Oh,
I look at it every day to see if I'm going to be happy or sad.
Don't do that. Don't do it. I mean, you should listen to us every day, but don't look at the Dow every day because it'll just drive you crazy.
I know.
Maybe a month at a time.
Okay.
That way you retain your sanity.
Okay.
Okay. And it'll be all much better.
I'll do whatever you tell me.
No, we appreciate you coming in this morning. Dr. Trowbridge teaches English composition.
I do.
At Lone Star College up in the
What's your
Woodlands.
language?
I'm trying to.
All right.
By the way, Goldman Sachs got that memo today. Did you hear about this?
No.
Seriously, Goldman Sachs sent out a memo. You can't use profanity in emails, texts, or any kind of communication.
That prevents you from talking about the United States government.
Well, it's going to pretty much clamp them down over there because they don't know how to express themselves any other way.
That's right.
But this immigration thing is really starting to pick up some steam. People are now beginning to realize what is going on with this law that Arizona had tried to enact. Where do you see this going? The judge put an injunction in. This just puts the brakes on it. It doesn't overturn it or anything.
No. Do you want me to be candid or euphemistic as though I were running for office with term limits?
I think you just were.
I did that.
Euphemistically, anyway.
It's always, in a sense, foolish to predict what courts might do. I mean, really, you can have some hunch, but you can't be certain. So I will venture to say right now that I think it's all over.
Really?
I think it's all over.
The courts are going to just say, we don't want to deal with this.
Well, here's what's going to happen. And I know because I went through the process of taking a case from the federal court to an appellate court to the Supreme Court on the issue of cancer treatment. And I know how the thing works. Plus, I worked with Chief Justice Warren Burger for 9 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
Worked at the Supreme Court, so I know how sausage is made. What will happen, Arizona will appeal it. They'll make an appeal to the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit will throw it back to the judge, the federal district judge, because that judge did not make a ruling. She issued a preliminary injunction. That's not really a ruling. That's a pause. That's a hold saying, we need to study this.
Right.
So there really isn't a ruling. So what will happen is it will go back to her court. That will take months, I promise. Just take months. Then, however that goes, it'll go to the appellate court, because whoever wins will take it to the appellate court. The appellate court is the Ninth Circuit, which is made up entirely of insane liberals. It just is. I mean, everything they rule on is overturned by the Supreme Court.
I'm so glad you sugarcoated it.
So the Ninth Circuit will take the case, probably rule in favor of the Department of Justice. That will take months. And then the appeal will be made to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will likely hear it because the court, you have to have only 4 judges on the Supreme Court of 9 vote to hear a case. And if you get 4 votes, you'll hear it.
Yeah.
So they'll get it.
Yeah.
But we're realistically talking on the fast track here, of this case actually being resolved in 2012.
Sounds like a long, drawn-out game of governmental hot potato.
Let me just tell you, normally, if you go through the process of district court, appellate court, and Supreme Court, that usually is a 4-year span. This one will, of course, be put on the fast track. Still, it's going to have to go through 3 courts, and it's going to take a year and a half.
Is this going to hinge on the question of whether or not it's the federal government's responsibility to enforce the immigration laws? Is that going to be the point?
And that's why, in fact, I was not at all surprised with this ruling. It didn't surprise me in the slightest. There is, in this little book that I carry with me called the Constitution, I almost sleep with this thing. Section 8 of Article 1 says that Congress has the enumerated power. And the reason I mention enumerated is if it's not enumerated, then the 10th Amendment states' rights kick in.
There you go.
And Arizona is arguing states' rights.
Uh-huh.
And Perry is arguing states' rights, and Greg Abbott's arguing states' rights. But that's if a power is not enumerated.
And this is.
And this is enumerated. And
Yeah.
it just says it. Congress has the authority to establish a uniform rule of naturalization. What that says to me, if you just read the book, is that the federal government takes the lead on immigration enforcement.
Yeah.
And even if the cops had helped them in Arizona, the cops there have no authority whatsoever to deport anyone.
Right.
It must go. It must go to ICE. It must go to the immigration officials.
They can arrest them, but the immigration guys have to send them out of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's happened, the ruling yesterday, absolutely emasculated the law, the Arizona law. It just totally emasculated it. And I'll tell you why. One of the fellows who helped draft the law, and a guy named Chris, I've got his name here. His name is Chris Kobach, and he speaks all the time about his issue. He wrote, quote, that there has to be a lawful stop in order, in fact, to ask somebody if you're illegal.
Right.
You can't simply walk down the street and say, well, there are some folks who look like Mexicans there where we can stop them. You have to have a lawful stop. And he said, and this is important, quote, the most likely context where this law would come into play is a traffic stop. What the decision yesterday did was to eliminate the traffic stop.
Dr. Ronald Trowbridge in the studio with us, looking at the Arizona immigration law and all of those aspects. We've got some questions, and you may have some too. Call us at 7139-650-650.